The hidden camera installed in the wife's room unveiled the hidden truth. "I never thought my wife was capable of this. How could she?" Ladies and gentlemen, the pristine halls of Norton Hospital held countless stories within its walls, but none quite as remarkable as the tale of Miller Classon and Charlotte Bennett. Miller, a distinguished black businessman known throughout Kentucky for his entrepreneurial success and philanthropic endeavors, never expected that a routine surgery would alter the course of his life forever. At 42, Miller had built his empire from the ground up, transforming a small startup into a multi-million-dollar technology corporation. His success was matched only by his kindness. Employees spoke of his generous spirit, his habit of remembering everyone's names, and his unwavering commitment to giving back to the community. Despite his achievements, a certain loneliness lingered in his eyes, noticeable to those who looked closely enough. Charlotte Bennett was barely 18 when their paths crossed, a fresh-faced nurse who had recently graduated from nursing school with honors. Born in a small Maryland town where dreams often stayed dreams, she had fought against the odds to pursue her passion for healthcare. Her family had scraped together every penny to support her education, and she carried their sacrifices with her in every step she took through the hospital corridors. The day Miller was admitted for his surgery, Charlotte was assigned to his post-operative care. Her genuine compassion and professional dedication immediately stood out. Unlike some who were intimidated by Miller's status, Charlotte treated him with the same warmth and respect she showed every patient. She would adjust his pillows with gentle hands, engage him in meaningful conversations during her rounds, and always seemed to anticipate his needs before he voiced them. During those 10 days of recovery, Miller found himself looking forward to Charlotte's shifts. She would bring him extra blankets during the cold nights without being asked, and somehow remembered his preference for grape juice over apple. When she checked his vitals, her touch was always gentle, her movements precise and caring. They shared conversations that stretched beyond the typical patient-nurse exchanges, discovering shared interests in classical music and French cuisine. Miller learned about her dreams of eventually opening a community clinic in her hometown. Charlotte, in turn, was captivated by Miller's stories of his journey from a modest background to business success, especially his emphasis on maintaining humanity in the corporate world. Their conversations flowed naturally, punctuated by shared laughter and meaningful silences. The other nurses noticed the special attention Charlotte gave to Miller's care, but none could fault her professionalism. She maintained perfect records, never neglected her other patients, and continued to exceed expectations in her duties. Yet there was an undeniable spark when they interacted, a connection that transcended their respective roles. As Miller's discharge date approached, he found himself growing increasingly anxious about losing contact with this remarkable young woman who had brought such warmth to his recovery. On his final day, while Charlotte was reviewing his discharge papers, Miller took a bold step. He wrote his personal number on a business card, adding a note on the back that read, "For whenever you need anything, medical advice not included." The gentle joke made Charlotte laugh, her eyes crinkling at the corners in a way that made Miller's heart skip a beat. The moment he handed her the card, their fingers brushed briefly, and both felt the electricity of that simple touch. Charlotte's cheeks flushed slightly as she tucked the card into her uniform pocket, trying to maintain her professional composure. Miller noticed how she bit her lower lip to suppress a smile, a gesture he would come to adore in the years ahead. As he was wheeled out of the hospital, Miller looked back one last time to see Charlotte standing in the doorway of his room. She raised her hand in a small wave, and in that moment both felt the subtle shift in the universe that happens when two souls recognize their potential for connection. Neither could have predicted the passionate love story that would unfold from this chance meeting, nor the heartbreak that lay hidden in their future. The Louisville sunshine seemed brighter that day as Miller left the hospital, his heart lighter not from his recovery alone, but from the promise of something new beginning. Charlotte returned to her duties, the weight of his business card in her pocket serving as a constant reminder of the successful businessman who saw her as more than just another nurse. That evening, as Charlotte drove home in her modest used car, she held Miller's card in her hand at every red light, debating whether it would be proper to text him so soon. Miller, meanwhile, sat in his luxury penthouse overlooking the city, wondering if she would use his number at all. Both were unaware that fate had already set their story in motion, a story that would become legend in Louisville's social circles, for better and eventually for worse. The seeds of their connection had been planted in the sterile environment of a hospital room, but would soon bloom into something far more vibrant and complex. Their story began with the purest of intentions, a successful man touched by the kindness of a young nurse and a dedicated caregiver inspired by the humanity of a patient. Yet life has a way of taking even the most innocent beginnings and weaving them into tapestries far more intricate and sometimes darker than we could ever imagine. A whirlwind romance. 3 days after Miller's discharge, his phone lit up with a message that would change everything. "Thank you for the card. I hope your recovery is going well. Charlotte." Such a simple text, yet Miller's heart raced as if he were 20 years younger. Their first date happened at Le Chateau, Louisville's finest French restaurant, where Charlotte arrived in a modest blue dress that made her eyes sparkle like sapphires. "I've never been anywhere this fancy," Charlotte confessed, her fingers nervously adjusting her silverware. "I feel a bit out of place." Miller reached across the table, gently covering her hand with his. "You belong anywhere you want to be, Charlotte. Your elegance comes from within." That evening marked the beginning of their whirlwind romance. Miller discovered that Charlotte's beauty went far deeper than her appearance. She possessed a wisdom beyond her years and a compassion that matched his own. During their second date at the Louisville Orchestra, Charlotte's eyes welled with tears during Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. "Music speaks to your soul, doesn't it?" Miller whispered. Charlotte nodded, wiping away a tear. "It reminds me of my grandmother. She used to play piano at our local church. She always said that music is God's way of telling us that magic is real." Miller's heart swelled. Here was a woman who understood beauty in its purest form. The gifts began small, a delicate silver bracelet that caught Charlotte's eye in a boutique window, a first edition of her favorite novel, Pride and Prejudice. But as their love grew, so did Miller's desire to shower her with everything she'd never had. A Cartier watch for her birthday made her gasp. "Miller, this is too much," she protested, trying to hand it back. He closed her fingers around the box. "Nothing is too much for someone who gives so much of herself to others. Let someone take care of you for once." Their love story became the talk of Louisville's social circles. The successful black businessman and the young nurse from Maryland. It was like a modern fairy tale. But what captured people's attention wasn't the obvious disparity in their backgrounds or ages. It was the palpable love that radiated from them both. On her 19th birthday, Miller arranged a celebration at the Ritz-Carlton that would be remembered for years. The grand ballroom was transformed into a winter wonderland, Charlotte's favorite season, with crystalline decorations and thousands of white roses. The city's elite gathered, but Miller had eyes only for Charlotte, who entered in a champagne-colored gown that made her look like a princess. As the orchestra played their song, Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, Miller took her hand and led her to the center of the room. The music softened, and he dropped to one knee. The collective gasp from the crowd was audible. "Charlotte Bennett," his voice trembled with emotion, Before you, my success meant nothing because I had no one to share it with. You came into my life like an angel, healing not just my body, but my soul. Your kindness, your grace, your beautiful heart, they've shown me what true love really means." He pulled out a platinum ring with a flawless 5-carat diamond. "Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife?" Tears streamed down Charlotte's face as she nodded, unable to speak. When she finally found her voice, it was barely a whisper. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." The wedding planning became the talk of Kentucky. No expense was spared. Miller wanted to give Charlotte the fairy tale she deserved. The guest list read like a who's who of American society. Hollywood stars, business tycoons, political figures. But Miller's favorite moment was when Charlotte's family arrived from Maryland and he saw her father cry at the sight of the wedding venue. "Sir," Miller said, embracing the older man, "thank you for raising such an extraordinary daughter." Their wedding day dawned perfect, a crisp autumn morning at the historic Sealback Hotel. Charlotte's dress was a custom Vera Wang creation, but it was her radiant smile that took everyone's breath away. As she walked down the aisle on her father's arm, Miller felt tears rolling down his cheeks. Their vows were personal, heartfelt declarations of love that left not a dry eye in the house. Charlotte's voice shook as she spoke. "Miller, you've shown me that dreams aren't just for fairy tales. Your love has given me wings, and your heart has given me a home. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life." Miller's response was equally moving. "Charlotte, you walked into my hospital room and straight into my heart. Your love has made me a better man, a better human being. I promise to spend every day of my life making sure you never regret choosing me, to protect your dreams as if they were my own, and to love you with every breath I take." The reception was spectacular, a blend of sophisticated elegance and joyful celebration. Hollywood's biggest stars mingled with Charlotte's hometown friends, united in celebration of a love that seemed perfect. The couple's first dance brought the room to a standstill, Miller and Charlotte moving as one to the strains of their beloved Moonlight Sonata. As they prepared to leave for their honeymoon in Switzerland, Charlotte hugged Miller tightly. "I never knew love could feel like this," she whispered. Miller kissed her forehead tenderly. "This is just the beginning, my love. I promise you a lifetime of happiness." They departed in a shower of rose petals, bound for the Swiss Alps, their hearts full of love and dreams. The world seemed perfect, their love unshakable. No one, least of all Miller, could have imagined that this beautiful beginning would lead to such a heartbreaking end. Their honeymoon was a dream. Private chalets in the Alps, moonlit sleigh rides, intimate dinners in centuries-old castles. Miller delighted in watching Charlotte experience these luxuries for the first time, her eyes wide with wonder at each new discovery. In these precious moments, their love seemed eternal, unbreakable. As they stood on their hotel balcony in Zermatt, watching the sunset paint the Matterhorn in shades of gold and pink, Charlotte turned to Miller with tears in her eyes. "Sometimes I'm afraid this is all a dream," she confessed, "that I'll wake up and find myself back in Maryland, just a small-town girl with big dreams." Miller pulled her close, his voice fierce with emotion. "This is real, Charlotte. Our love is real, and I promise you, the best is yet to come." Oh, how those words would come back to haunt him in the years ahead, when the dream would shatter like crystal against stone. But for now, they were suspended in a perfect moment of love and trust, unaware that fate had other plans for their fairy tale romance. Paradise. Lost 2 years of blissful marriage had passed like a beautiful dream in the Klassen mansion. Every morning Miller would wake up early just to watch Charlotte sleep, marveling at how her golden hair caught the first rays of dawn. Their love had only grown stronger, transforming their magnificent house into a true home, filled with laughter, tender moments, and dreams of the future they would build together. "I think we should start planning for a family," Miller had said one Sunday morning as they shared breakfast on their terrace overlooking their rose garden. Charlotte's eyes had lit up with joy, and they spent hours talking about baby names and nursery colors. Their happiness seemed complete, unshakable, eternal, but fate had other plans. It started with small changes. Charlotte began experiencing unexplained fatigue, occasional dizziness, and loss of appetite. At first, they dismissed it as stress from her work at the hospital, where she continued to serve as a part-time nurse, insisting on maintaining her professional identity despite Miller's wealth. "My love, perhaps you should take a break," Miller suggested one evening, watching her pick at her dinner. "You're pushing yourself too hard." Charlotte shook her head, her face paler than usual. "I can't abandon my patients. They need me." Her dedication to helping others was one of the things Miller loved most about her, but now it worried him. The symptoms grew worse. One morning, Charlotte collapsed in their bathroom. Miller found her there, crumpled on the marble floor like a fallen angel. The fear that gripped his heart in that moment would haunt his nightmares for years to come. "We're going to Norton Hospital right now," Miller declared, cradling her in his arms. But Charlotte's response would mark the beginning of their tragedy. "No," she whispered, her voice surprisingly firm. "Not Norton. I don't want my colleagues seeing me like this. Please, Miller, I want home care." Miller frowned. "Sweetheart, you need proper medical attention." "I know someone," Charlotte interrupted. "A private nurse, Sean Warner. He's excellent at his job and very discreet. Please, Miller, do this for me." Looking into her pleading eyes, Miller felt his resistance crumble. How could he deny her anything when she looked at him like that? If he had known then what that decision would lead to, perhaps their story would have ended differently. Sean Warner arrived the next day, tall, athletic, with a professional demeanor that initially put Miller at ease. His credentials were impeccable, his references stellar. Miller spared no expense setting up a medical suite in their home, equipped with everything Charlotte might need. "Thank you for understanding," Charlotte said, squeezing Miller's hand as he helped her settle into the medical suite. "I just want to recover in the comfort of our home." The first few days seemed normal. Sean was professional, Charlotte appeared to be receiving excellent care, and Miller divided his time between running his business and checking on his beloved wife. But subtle changes began to appear, like hairline cracks in a precious vase. Charlotte's behavior shifted. She became distant, distracted. The way she looked at Miller changed. Gone was the sparkle of love in her eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like guilt. When he tried to hold her hand, she would pull away, claiming she felt too weak. "You should rest, Miller," she would say. "Don't waste your time sitting here with me. Sean has everything under control." Sean. The way she said his name should have been Miller's first warning. Gone was the formal Mr. Warner, replaced by a familiarity that made Miller's heart ache in ways he couldn't explain. Miller tried to maintain his routine of bringing Charlotte breakfast in bed, but increasingly found Sean had beaten him to it. He would arrive to find them laughing together over some private joke, their conversation dying as soon as he entered the room. "You look tired, Mr. Klassen," Sean would say, his concern seemingly genuine. "Why don't you get some rest? I'll take good care of Mrs. Klassen." The distance between Miller and Charlotte grew, measured not in feet, but in unspoken words and avoided glances. She no longer asked about his day or shared her thoughts. Their once deep conversations became surface-level exchanges about medication schedules and doctor's appointments. One particularly painful evening, Miller brought home Charlotte's favorite roses, cream-colored with pink tips. He entered her room to find her looking more vibrant than she had in weeks, engaged in an animated conversation with Sean. The moment they noticed him, Charlotte's smile faded, and she suddenly looked tired again. "Oh, Miller," she said, her voice weak. "I'm not feeling well right now. Could you put the flowers in the hallway? The scent is too strong." Miller stood there, roses dropping petals like tears, watching as his wife turned away from him. In that moment, he felt something break inside him, not with a crash, but with the quiet devastation of a dream dissolving into nightmare. The next day, Charlotte announced she needed to go out for medical treatments. When Miller offered to accompany her, she declined quickly, too quickly. "Sean will drive me," she said, not meeting his eyes. "It's just routine tests. No need to disrupt your work schedule." Something in her voice, in her manner, made Miller's entrepreneurial instincts tingle. The same instincts that had helped him build his empire now warned him that something was terribly wrong. He called Norton Hospital that afternoon, his heart pounding as he asked about Charlotte's appointments. The response confirmed his worst fears. There were no appointments scheduled for Charlotte Bennett Klassen. There hadn't been any for weeks. That night, as Miller lay alone in their bed, Charlotte had insisted on staying in the medical suite for convenience. He stared at their wedding photo on the wall. In it, they were dancing their first dance, lost in each other's eyes, their love radiating from the image like light from a star. "Oh, Charlotte," he whispered to the empty room, "what happened to us?" Little did he know, the worst was yet to come. The truth would be more devastating than anything he could imagine, and the steps he would take to uncover it would change all their lives forever. Please subscribe to Channel Name to continue following our stories of love, passion, and life's unexpected turns. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt narratives to light. With love and respect, we thank you for being part of our storytelling journey. The bitter truth revealed. Miller sat in his home office, the weight of suspicion crushing his chest. The elegant mahogany desk that had witnessed countless business triumphs now served as his command center for a far more personal investigation. His trembling hands held his tablet, finger hovering over the app that controlled the hidden cameras he'd installed throughout their home. The decision to install surveillance equipment had torn him apart. "This isn't me," he whispered to himself in the dark of night. "I'm not this person, but the businessman in him, the man who had learned to trust his instincts, knew something was terribly wrong in his paradise. He'd chosen a day when he was supposed to be at an important business meeting in Cincinnati. "I'll be gone for 3 days," he told Charlotte that morning, watching her reaction carefully. For the first time in weeks, her eyes sparked with something other than exhaustion. Was it relief? "Drive safely," she'd said, not even looking up from her phone. No kiss goodbye, no "I'll miss you," no "I love you." The Charlotte who had once cried when he left for overnight business trips now seemed eager for his departure. Now, alone in his office, just hours after his supposed departure, Miller took a deep breath and opened the surveillance feed. The first few hours showed nothing unusual. Charlotte resting, Sean performing his nursing duties professionally. But as evening approached, everything changed. The footage showed Charlotte rising from her bed with an energy she hadn't displayed in weeks. She moved to her closet, pulling out a dress Miller had bought her in Paris. Her movements were fluid, showing no sign of the weakness that had supposedly necessitated home care. "Oh, God," Miller whispered, his hands beginning to shake. "Please, no." The next sequence of images would be forever burned into his memory. Charlotte, dressed beautifully, her hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, sitting at their dining room table with Sean. The table was set with their best china, the wedding china they'd received from Miller's mother. Candles flickered between them as they shared an intimate dinner. Miller's throat constricted as he watched them laugh together, their bodies leaning closer across the table. The way Charlotte looked at Sean, it was the same look she used to give Miller. That sparkle in her eyes, the gentle tilt of her head, the soft laugh that used to be his alone. But it was what happened after dinner that shattered Miller's world completely. In their living room, the room where Miller and Charlotte had spent countless evenings planning their future, sharing dreams and building their life together, his wife now danced in another man's arms. The surveillance camera captured every detail. How Sean's hands traced the curves of her body, how Charlotte's fingers tangled in his hair, how their lips met in a passionate kiss that spoke of practiced familiarity. Miller's hand crushed the crystal tumbler he was holding, sending shards of glass and drops of bourbon across his desk. He barely noticed the blood dripping from his palm. "My love life is like this glass," he thought bitterly, shattered beyond repair. The footage continued relentlessly. Charlotte and Sean moved their intimacy to the guest bedroom. At least they had spared him the final indignity of using the master suite. Miller forced himself to watch, each moment driving the knife deeper into his heart. He needed to know everything, needed to understand the full extent of their betrayal. Their passionate encounters were interspersed with tender moments that hurt even more. The way they whispered to each other, shared secret smiles, exchanged loving glances. This wasn't just a physical affair. They were in love. As dawn approached, Miller watched Charlotte return to her sick bed, transforming back into the role of invalid wife. Sean resumed his professional demeanor, though their lingering glances told the true story of their relationship. Miller sat in his darkened office until sunrise, tears flowing freely down his face. Every memory of his life with Charlotte now felt tainted, corrupted. The wedding vows they'd shared, the dreams they'd built together, the future they'd planned, all of it seemed like a cruel joke. He thought about their first meeting at the hospital, how genuine her care had seemed. Had it all been a lie? Had she ever truly loved him? Or had he just been a stepping stone, a means to a more comfortable life until something better came along? The businessman in him wanted to react immediately, to confront them, to throw them both out of his house. But another part of him, the part that still loved Charlotte despite everything, wanted to understand why. What had he done wrong? When had he stopped being enough for her? His mind wandered to their last truly happy moment together, just months ago, when they'd discussed having children. The memory now felt like poison in his veins. Had she been thinking of Sean even then? As the sun rose over Louisville, casting long shadows across his office, Miller made his decision. He wouldn't confront them immediately. No, this betrayal deserved a special kind of response. They had turned his life into a performance, playing him for a fool. It was time to give them a performance of his own. He began planning meticulously. The same attention to detail that had made him successful in business now focused on orchestrating the perfect revelation of their betrayal. He would make sure everyone knew the truth, their friends, their colleagues, the entire social circle that had celebrated their fairy tale romance. "You wanted to put on a show, my love," he whispered to Charlotte's smiling face in their wedding photo. "I'll give you a show you'll never forget." He spent the next hours downloading and securing copies of the surveillance footage, organizing it chronologically, documenting every instance of their betrayal. Each kiss, each embrace, each moment of intimacy was catalogued with the precision of a forensic investigator. When his phone buzzed with a message from Charlotte asking about his trip to Cincinnati, he responded casually, playing his part in their charade. "Missing you," she wrote, and Miller had to fight back a bitter laugh. The message was probably sent from the arms of her lover. As he worked through his plan, Miller felt something inside him harden. The love that had made him vulnerable was crystallizing into something else, a determination to show the world and Charlotte exactly who they had betrayed. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was Miller Klassen, a self-made man who had overcome every obstacle life had thrown at him. This would be no different. "You taught me one final lesson, Charlotte," he murmured, looking at the surveillance feeds one last time. "Never trust a heart that comes with an instruction manual for healing." The stage was set. Now it was time to prepare for the final act of their marriage. A grand finale that would shake the foundations of Louisville society and leave an indelible mark on all their lives. A public reckoning. Miller orchestrated what Louisville society believed would be the social event of the season. The grand ballroom of the Brown Hotel was transformed into a vision of elegance that surpassed even their wedding reception. Crystal chandeliers cast their soft glow over tables draped in ivory silk, each centerpiece a masterpiece of white roses and orchids, Charlotte's favorites. The guest list was carefully curated: business partners, hospital staff, social elite, and most crucially, Sean's wife, Rebecca. Miller had personally called Rebecca, his voice warm with manufactured concern. "I'm planning a celebration for Charlotte's recovery," he'd told her. "Your husband's care has been instrumental in her improvement. You must both attend." The invitations went out, gold-embossed cards promising an evening of revelations and celebrations. Charlotte was thrilled, assuming Miller was throwing a party to celebrate her recovery and their love. If she noticed anything strange in his behavior during the planning, she attributed it to stress from work. "You're too good to me," she'd said, kissing his cheek the morning of the event. The casual intimacy of her betrayal made his stomach turn. The evening began like any other high society gathering. Guests arrived in their finest attire, champagne flowed freely, and the orchestra played soft classical music. Charlotte wore a stunning red gown, the color of passion, Miller thought bitterly, while Sean cleaned up well in a tuxedo, maintaining a professional distance from Charlotte in public. Miller watched them steal glances at each other across the room, their secret passion visible to him now that he knew what to look for. He waited until dinner was served, until the room was perfectly silent except for the gentle clink of silver against fine china. Rising from his seat, Miller gently tapped his crystal champagne flute. The sound rang through the ballroom, drawing all eyes to him. Charlotte smiled, expecting another of his loving speeches about their life together. "Distinguished guests, dear friends," Miller began, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his heart. "We are gathered here tonight for what you believe is a celebration of healing and love. And in a way it is, though not the kind you might expect." He paused, scanning the room. Charlotte's smile began to fade as she sensed something different in his tone. "2 years ago, in this very hotel, I married what I thought was an angel. Charlotte Bennett, a nurse who cared for me during my darkest hours, became Charlotte Klassen, my wife, my dream, my everything." His voice cracked slightly. "I gave her my name, my heart, my trust, and most importantly, my love." The room was silent now, tension building like electricity before a storm. Charlotte's face had gone pale, her fingers clutching her napkin. "When she fell ill, I spared no expense in her care. I brought the best home nurse money could buy." Miller's eyes found Sean in the crowd. "Mr. Sean Warner, would you stand, please?" Sean rose slowly, confusion evident on his face. His wife, Rebecca, looked on proudly, unaware of the devastation about to unfold. "Mr. Warner indeed provided excellent care to my wife. In fact, his care was so thorough, so intimate, that it extended far beyond his professional duties." The first murmurs rippled through the crowd, Charlotte's face drained of all color. "Miller," she whispered, but he continued as if he hadn't heard her. "I believe in evidence-based decisions in business and in life. So tonight, I'd like to share some evidence with you all." He gestured, and the ballroom screens came to life, The surveillance footage began to play, carefully edited to be tasteful, yet unmistakable in its implications. Charlotte and Sean's intimate dinners, their dances, their kisses, all projected larger than life for everyone to see. The gasps were audible. Rebecca Warner stood up so quickly her chair crashed to the floor. Charlotte sat frozen, her hands covering her mouth, tears streaming down her face. My wife's illness, ladies and gentlemen, was as fake as her love for me. While I worked to build our future, she built a different one with the man I hired to care for her. Miller turned to face Charlotte directly. I gave you everything, my heart, my trust, my name, my future. You took it all and treated it like a script in your performance, a stepping stone to something else. Was any of it real, Charlotte? Did you ever truly love me? Charlotte tried to speak, but no words came out. Sean stepped forward as if to defend her, but Rebecca's voice cut through the silence like a whip. You bastard! She lunged at Sean, her palm connecting with his face in a crack that echoed through the ballroom. All those late nights, all those emergency calls, you were just with her. Miller raised his hand, and the screens went dark. I've asked my lawyers to prepare divorce papers. They're here tonight, Charlotte. You'll find them at your place setting, under your napkin. With trembling hands, Charlotte lifted her napkin to find the documents waiting there, a pen placed precisely alongside them. Sign them, Miller said, his voice now deadly quiet. Sign them now, in front of everyone who celebrated our wedding in this very hotel. Let them all witness the end as they witnessed the beginning. The orchestra, which had fallen silent, began to play softly. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, their wedding song. The cruel irony of the music brought fresh tears to Charlotte's eyes as she picked up the pen. Miller, please, she sobbed, we can talk about this. We're past talking, Charlotte. Sign. As she signed the papers, her tears falling onto the documents, Miller turned to Sean. Mr. Warner, I believe you'll find your wife has some papers for you as well. I took the liberty of having her meet with my divorce attorney last week. Rebecca stepped forward, her own set of papers in hand. Sign them, Sean. Sign them, or I'll ensure every hospital in the country knows what kind of care you provide to your patients. The ballroom was dead silent, except for the sound of pens scratching paper and muffled sobs. Miller surveyed the scene he had orchestrated, feeling no triumph, only a hollow vindication. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice ringing through the silence, thank you for witnessing the end of a fairy tale. The dinner and dancing will continue as planned. After all, he smiled coldly, we're here to celebrate truth, aren't we? As the orchestra resumed playing and the shocked guests tried to process what they had witnessed, Miller made his way to the exit. He paused at the door, looking back one last time at the woman he had loved so completely. Charlotte sat there, broken and small, the signed divorce papers in front of her, her perfect red dress, now a symbol of her exposed sins. Their eyes met across the room, one last look between two people who had once promised each other forever. Then Miller turned and walked away, leaving behind the shattered remains of what had once been a perfect love story. The price of betrayal. In the aftermath of that fateful night at the Brown Hotel, the ripples of destruction spread through Louisville society like waves from a stone dropped in still water. The price of betrayal proved steeper than any of them could have imagined, affecting not just the main players, but everyone in their orbit. For Charlotte, the fall from grace was immediate and devastating. The morning after the party, she found herself locked out of the mansion she had called home for 2 years. Her key card deactivated, her personal belongings packed in designer suitcases, and left with the security guard at the gate. A note from Miller's lawyer informed her that she would receive only what was stipulated in their prenuptial agreement, the same document she had once signed with a laugh, saying, "I don't need any of this. I only need your love." She checked into a modest hotel, a far cry from the luxury she had grown accustomed to. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages, some expressing shock, others disappointment, and many filled with judgment and scorn. The Louisville social circle, once so welcoming, now closed, ranks against her. The worst blow came from Norton Hospital. Though no formal complaint had been filed, the whispers and rumors made her position untenable. Her supervisor called her into the office 3 days after the party. "Charlotte," the older woman said, genuine pain in her eyes, "you've put us in an impossible position. A nurse having an affair with another nurse while under his care. The ethical implications alone." She was offered a choice: resign or face an ethics investigation. With trembling hands, Charlotte signed her resignation letter, watching her career crumble before her eyes. Sean Warner faced his own personal apocalypse. Rebecca, true to her word, ensured that every medical facility in Kentucky knew about his breach of professional ethics. His nursing license was suspended pending investigation, and the custody battle for their children turned vicious. "How could you?" Rebecca screamed during one particularly heated custody hearing. "We had everything, a beautiful family, a good life. You threw it all away for what? An affair with a patient?" Sean's response was barely audible. "I fell in love." "Love?" Rebecca's laugh was bitter. "Was it love when our children asked why Daddy doesn't live with us anymore? Was it love when I had to explain to our 10-year-old why his friends at school were saying horrible things about his father?" The custody battle drained Sean's savings, forced him to sell his car, and eventually led him to move into a small apartment on the outskirts of town. His children, influenced by their mother's pain and the whispers of others, began refusing to see him during his designated visitation times. Meanwhile, Miller's suffering took a different form. His public triumph masked a private agony that threatened to consume him. He threw himself into work with renewed intensity, often staying at the office until dawn, trying to exhaust himself enough to sleep without dreaming of Charlotte. His executive assistant found him one morning, slumped over his desk, surrounded by empty whiskey bottles and old photos of his wedding day. She quietly called his driver and had him taken home, then cleared his schedule for the week. The mansion felt like a mausoleum. Every room held memories that now felt poisoned. The dining room where they had shared countless meals, the garden where they had planned to build a playground for their future children, the library where Charlotte used to curl up with a book on rainy days. Each space was haunted by what had been and what could have been. One night, in a moment of weakness, Miller found himself standing in what had been their bedroom. Charlotte's perfume still lingered faintly in the air. He opened her closet, now empty except for a single dress she had forgotten, the blue one she had worn on their first date. The sight of it brought him to his knees, and for the first time since the night of the party, he allowed himself to truly weep. The social fallout continued to spread. Friends felt compelled to choose sides. Business associates whispered behind Miller's back, some questioning whether a man who couldn't keep his wife happy could be trusted to run a company. He handled their doubts with steel in his spine, closing bigger deals than ever, as if to prove that his personal tragedy had only made him stronger. Charlotte tried to contact him several times. Letters, emails, messages passed through mutual friends, all went unanswered. Her final attempt came 6 months after the party, when she waited outside his office building in the rain. "Miller, please," she called out as he walked to his car. "Just let me explain." He paused, and for a moment, Charlotte thought he might turn around. But he continued walking, leaving her standing there in the rain, her makeup running down her face like the tears at their wedding. Only these were tears of despair rather than joy. Sean and Charlotte's relationship, born in deception, couldn't survive in the harsh light of reality. The weight of what they had done, the lives they had destroyed, created a chasm between them that grew wider with each passing day. "We did this," Charlotte said during their last meeting at a small coffee shop far from their usual haunts. "We destroyed everything. Your family, my marriage, our careers. For what?" Sean couldn't meet her eyes. "I thought it was love." "Maybe it was," Charlotte whispered. "But was it worth the price?" They parted ways that day, each carrying their own burden of guilt and regret. Sean moved to another state, trying to rebuild some semblance of a life away from the wreckage he had helped create. Charlotte remained in Louisville, a ghost of her former self, haunting the periphery of the society that had once embraced her. The price of betrayal proved to be infinite, paid in installments of tears, regrets, and shattered dreams. It showed them all that some choices once made can never be unmade, and some wounds, no matter how much time passes, never truly heal. Miller's words from that fateful night echoed through their lives like a curse. The truth, like love, leaves marks that never fade. Each of them would carry those marks forever, visible only to those who knew where to look, but felt with every beat of their wounded hearts. Paths that diverge. A decade passed, and the lives of Miller, Charlotte, and Sean unfolded into starkly contrasting realities, each shaped by the decisions they had made and the consequences they continued to bear. Their paths, once intertwined, now diverged so completely that they became distant figures in one another's stories, yet the shadow of their shared history lingered. Miller-Classon, rebirth and redemption. For Miller, the years following his devastating betrayal were marked by quiet resilience and purposeful rebuilding. After his public confrontation with Charlotte and Sean, Miller retreated from the spotlight, focusing instead on his work and personal growth. It was during this period of introspection that he met Olivia. Olivia, a social worker with a deep passion for helping marginalized communities, entered Miller's life through a charity gala hosted by his foundation. She wasn't drawn to his wealth or reputation, but to his vision for change and his evident humanity. Her unassuming warmth and genuine kindness gradually pulled Miller out of his emotional shell, teaching him that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Their relationship blossomed over shared goals and a mutual respect for each other's values. Olivia's grounded approach to life complemented Miller's high-pressure career, and together they built a partnership defined by transparency and support. Their marriage, held in a small garden surrounded by close friends and family, was a stark contrast to the lavish spectacle of Miller's first wedding. Miller's love for Olivia deepened as they became parents to 2 children. His son, Michael, and daughter, Grace, became the light of his life, their laughter filling the once empty halls of his home. Miller embraced fatherhood wholeheartedly, finding joy in the simple acts of reading bedtime stories, coaching soccer games, and helping with school projects. Professionally, Miller's empire continued to grow, but his focus shifted. The Classon Foundation expanded its initiatives, funding scholarships for underprivileged students, establishing health clinics, and supporting mentorship programs for young entrepreneurs. The foundation became a beacon of hope for many, and Miller's name was increasingly associated with philanthropy rather than just corporate success. Despite his public triumphs, Miller rarely spoke of Charlotte, even to Olivia. The scars of his past had faded, but they had not disappeared. He carried them as silent reminders of the lessons he had learned, the importance of trust, the resilience of the human spirit, and the necessity of letting go. Charlotte Bennett, a life of quiet atonement. Charlotte, in contrast, lived a life that balanced professional accomplishment with personal isolation. After the fallout of her affair with Sean, she left Louisville's social circles and poured herself into her nursing career. Her work became her sanctuary, a place where she could lose herself in the needs of others and avoid the pain of her own mistakes. Through relentless dedication, Charlotte climbed the professional ladder, eventually becoming the head nurse at a prominent regional hospital. Her colleagues respected her for her clinical expertise and her ability to manage complex situations with grace. Younger nurses often sought her guidance, drawn to her calm demeanor and wealth of experience. Charlotte became a mentor to many, finding a bittersweet solace in helping others achieve the dreams she felt she had tarnished. Yet, despite her professional success, Charlotte struggled to find personal fulfillment. Her evenings were marked by solitude, spent in a modest apartment filled with books and the faint scent of lavender. She avoided romantic relationships, unable to overcome the lingering fear of trust and betrayal. The memory of Miller's broken expression haunted her, a constant reminder of the love she had squandered. Charlotte sought redemption through service, volunteering at free clinics on weekends and organizing community health drives. While these efforts brought her a sense of purpose, they could not erase the regret that lingered in her heart. The weight of her choices hung over her like a shadow, visible only to those who looked closely. One night, after a particularly grueling shift, Charlotte found herself staring at an old photo of her and Miller from their wedding day. She traced his face with her fingers, whispering an apology to the man she had once loved but betrayed so deeply. Though she had tried to move on, the image of their shared past remained etched in her memory, a stark contrast to the life she now lived. Sean Warner. A life in ruins. Sean's life took a far darker turn. The legal battles with his ex-wife, Rebecca, drained him of his financial resources and emotional stability. Losing his nursing license was a blow he could never fully recover from, and his attempts to rebuild his life were met with relentless obstacles. He moved to a small town on the outskirts of Kentucky, taking on menial jobs to survive. The ambitious, confident man he had once been was now a shadow of himself, worn down by regret and the weight of his choices. Sean attempted to maintain a relationship with his children, but their resentment ran deep. Despite his efforts to reconnect, their interactions remained distant and strained, leaving Sean feeling more isolated than ever. Therapy became a turning point for Sean, though it came late in his journey. Through counseling, he began to confront the root of his actions, realizing that his affair with Charlotte had been less about love and more about escapism. He admitted to himself that he had been running from the dissatisfaction in his own life, seeking validation in the wrong places. Sean eventually found some semblance of purpose as a patient advocate, helping individuals navigate the complexities of the healthcare system. The role allowed him to use his skills to assist others, providing a small sense of redemption. But his life remained marked by loneliness and struggle, the price of his moment of passion and its far-reaching consequences. The divergence. As a decade unfolded, the lives of Miller, Charlotte, and Sean diverged completely. Miller built a new life filled with love, purpose, and family. Charlotte found professional redemption but remained burdened by personal regret. Sean, unable to escape the shadow of his past, lived a life of quiet desperation, seeking redemption in small acts of service. Though their paths no longer crossed, the echoes of their shared history lingered. Each carried the marks of their choices, visible in the lives they had built and the lessons they had learned. Time had moved them forward, but the past remained a silent companion, shaping their futures in ways they could never have foreseen. An unexpected encounter. Fate, ever unpredictable, wove its threads to bring Miller and Charlotte face to face again. It happened during a business presentation at a regional healthcare conference where Miller was invited as a keynote speaker, representing the Klasan Foundation's latest health initiative. Charlotte, now a respected head nurse, had been asked to attend as part of her hospital's delegation. Neither anticipated crossing paths, yet their shared history found them in the same room for the first time in a decade. Charlotte entered the conference hall with her usual composure, dressed in a navy blue suit that matched her professional demeanor. She scanned the agenda absent-mindedly until her eyes landed on the name at the top of the keynote schedule: Miller Klassen. Her heart skipped a beat, and a wave of emotions swept over her. She hadn't seen or spoken to him since the night their lives fell apart. As the presentation began, Miller took the stage, radiating confidence and warmth. He was everything she remembered, poised, charismatic, and commanding the room with an ease that reminded her of how he had once commanded her heart. But there was something different about him now, something calmer and lighter. Time had softened his sharp edges, and his genuine smile spoke of a peace she envied but could not share. Miller spoke eloquently about the Klassen Foundation's new initiative to provide mobile clinics in underserved rural areas. His passion for making healthcare accessible to all was evident, and the audience was captivated. Charlotte sat in the back, her hands trembling slightly as she watched him. Memories of their life together flooded her mind. Their first meeting, the laughter they shared, the promises she had broken. Tears welled up in her eyes and she blinked them away, hoping no one would notice. When the presentation ended, the audience erupted in applause, and Miller stepped down from the stage. Charlotte thought she could slip away unnoticed, but fate had other plans. As she turned to leave, she found herself face to face with him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Miller's eyes met hers, and time seemed to stand still. Charlotte's breath hitched as she saw the man she had betrayed, the man who had once loved her so completely. Her composure crumbled, and tears spilled down her cheeks. She began, her voice breaking. "Miller, I'm so sorry." Miller studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, not the bitter smile of someone reliving past pain, but the gentle, sincere smile of someone who had found closure. "Good luck," he said simply, his tone kind but detached. Charlotte's tears flowed harder at the weight of those two words. They carried no resentment, no anger, only a quiet finality that pierced her soul. Miller had moved on, found peace, and built a life she could only imagine. Yet here she stood, still carrying the weight of her choices, unable to escape the regret that clung to her like a shadow. Miller gave her a slight nod before walking away, leaving her standing in the hallway, her emotions raw and her thoughts racing. She watched him disappear into the crowd, his confident stride a testament to the life he had rebuilt without her. For Miller, the encounter was a moment of quiet affirmation. He had long since let go of the anger and heartbreak that had once consumed him. Seeing Charlotte again stirred memories, but they no longer held the power to hurt him. His life with Olivia, his children and his work had filled the void she had left, and he was content with the person he had become. For Charlotte, however, the encounter was a painful reminder of all she had lost. She realized that while Miller had found forgiveness, for her and for himself, she had yet to forgive herself. The tears she shed that day were not just for him, but for the woman she used to be, and the life she had thrown away. As the conference continued, Charlotte chose to stay, her resolve hardening with each session. Miller's words, though brief, had sparked something in her, a desire to finally confront her past and find her own peace. Though their paths had diverged long ago, their unexpected encounter left a lasting impact, reminding both of the lessons they had learned and the resilience of the human heart. Lessons written in time. The story of Miller, Charlotte, and Sean became a poignant reminder of the fragility of trust and the far-reaching consequences of betrayal. Though their lives had diverged, the lessons from their intertwined past were etched deeply into their futures, offering wisdom to others who heard of their tale. Miller's lesson: trust and renewal. Miller's journey was a testament to the power of resilience and the possibility of second chances. Betrayed in the most devastating way, he chose not to let the pain define him. Instead, he rebuilt his life with a steadfast focus on healing, both for himself and for the world around him. Through Olivia and their shared mission of philanthropy, Miller discovered that love, when rooted in honesty and respect, could flourish even after heartbreak. His story inspired many who had faced similar challenges. He often spoke publicly about the importance of trusting again, despite the fear of vulnerability. "Broken trust can feel like the end," he once said at a conference, "but it can also be the beginning of something stronger if you allow yourself to heal and grow." Through his work with the Klassen Foundation, Miller gave others the second chances he had granted himself. He proved that life after betrayal wasn't just about survival, but about thriving and finding joy in new beginnings. Yet, he never sugarcoated his experiences, acknowledging that the scars of broken trust never fully fade. They simply remind you of the strength it takes to move forward. Charlotte's lesson: regret and redemption. Charlotte's life illustrated the profound impact of choices and the difficulty of living with their consequences. Her professional accomplishments, though significant, could not fill the void left by the betrayal she had committed. The respect she earned from colleagues and mentees was bittersweet, a constant reminder of what she had gained professionally but lost personally. Her regret was a heavy burden, but it also fueled her dedication to her work. She threw herself into helping others, mentoring young nurses and advocating for better patient care. In these acts, she sought redemption, though she knew it could never fully erase her past. Charlotte's story became a cautionary tale for those who heard it, a reminder that actions driven by momentary desires can leave wounds that last a lifetime. While she found purpose in her career, she was never able to fully escape the shadow of her choices. Her life was a quiet example of how even the most profound regret can lead to growth, but not necessarily to peace. Sean's lesson: consequences and accountability. Sean's ongoing struggles were a stark warning of the ripple effects of betrayal. His affair with Charlotte, fueled by fleeting passion, cost him everything: his family, his career, and his sense of self. The man who had once been a dedicated caregiver and father became a symbol of the dangers of succumbing to temptation without considering the long-term consequences. Sean's life after the scandal was one of survival rather than fulfillment. His attempts at redemption, though earnest, were overshadowed by the irreversible damage he had caused. His strained relationships with his children and his struggle to rebuild his professional life served as a reminder that while forgiveness is possible, it must be earned through accountability and consistent effort. Though he found some solace in helping others as a patient advocate, Sean's story was ultimately one of loss, a reminder that some mistakes leave scars too deep to heal. His life underscored the importance of making choices with integrity and the understanding that every action has consequences, not just for oneself, but for others. The cautionary tale together, their stories painted a vivid picture of love, betrayal, and the resilience of the human spirit. Their tale became a whispered cautionary story in Louisville's social circles, a reminder that trust, once broken, leaves marks that linger long after forgiveness is granted. Miller's journey showed that happiness is possible after heartbreak, but it requires courage, forgiveness, and the willingness to trust again. Charlotte's path revealed that professional success can never replace personal integrity, and the weight of regret is a burden difficult to shed. Sean's struggles highlighted the dangers of momentary pleasures, which can unravel lives and relationships built over years. Each carried the marks of their choices in different ways, serving as living lessons for those who heard their story. Time had moved them forward, but it had also written their experiences into the lives they touched, ensuring their legacy as a tale of love, loss, and the consequences of broken trust.